Ryan,
There
you fucking God damn it. Oh my God.
You want to
We're 8
laud us
seconds in.
again?
We're 8 seconds in.
We're 8 seconds in, but we're 12 minutes prior that we've gone through the whole record, everybody, already. And we've already come to the conclusion of that Quicksilver Messenger Service is the greatest band of all. No, Mishpucha. Everybody missed it. This is the Mishpucha. Wayne Federman, Morty Coyle. Wayne, how many times have you been on the podcast?
I think this is my 13th.
14th.
Wow.
You attribute, so that's 311 episodes we've done so far. You account for 4.5%. You're the Green Party. you're Jill Stein. You are the Jill
He is
Stein.
a Russian sympathizer.
Yeah,
Morty,
course.
Morty, you've been on. I mean, you had the chunk where you were on every episode, but as an official guest, this is your second time. But yet you've been a part of the podcast. Do you remember the first one you started helping me with?
Earth, Wind, and Fire, where I fucked up the Wanda Sykes.
You fucked it up, dude. I didn't want to say.
I learned Wikipedia is not an exact science.
So I found out that you were a
you were married to a fella who she's like, nah, that wasn't me. I went, oh great. Good night.
So you started 9 businesses and owned 14 food trucks. He's like, what you talking about, player? I don't know what the fuck you. She gave me the best compliment I've ever been given in my whole life. It was after the goddamn Comedy Jam, the one time that she did it, where she brought Tony Braxton, and then the band fucked up Tony Braxton's song. But afterwards, Wanda had been drinking. We're having a great time. And she goes, Josh, I love you so much, I'd smoke crack with your ass. And I just hug her. And I mean, I don't think anybody's ever given me a better compliment since. How are we, boys? How are we?
Well, I wouldn't smoke crack with you, but I might do a little bit of doobage with Wayne.
Would you eat, if my life depended on, would you eat a piece of sirloin?
I don't think
my life depends on it. I'm going to die.
on me eating meat.
And you eating meat? Would you do it? If I'm gonna die, would you?
I mean, I would. It would be a consideration. I think I might have to, because I think my ethics would be such that it was like the robot ethics, where it's like I can do no harm. I would have to save your life by eating meat, but not generally. I would complain about it the whole time, but I complain about eating broccoli.
You do, yeah, you do. Wayne, how are you, buddy? You figured your camera out?
Yeah, sorry about that. It's sweet. Yeah, anyway, I'm good. I'm very excited about this episode. Morty and I just saw Morty. I had an incredible experience in the Kibitz room with him maybe 4 weeks ago.
Yeah, I sent Josh the photo of us.
Yeah, but it was but the whole thing of just like name 3 bands. And so I named 3 bands, the Foundations.
What are you talking about? Wait, what were the 3 bands? What do you mean?
It was Foundation. I can't remember the third one I did. And then
I usually just go out to somebody and I go, just name 3 musical artists. And then I go on stage and we immediately play them in a row. But I don't tell the guys or anything. We just go into it.
I just go into it. It's so thrilling. It's, it's like UCB for musicians. It's the level of musicianship is so incredible. Are those, I assume, all just studio guys? Or are they in?
Well, they're guys that played around forever, and we've all played together for years. It's the Fockers and Tuesday nights at the Kibitz Room, Candors, which is where I met Josh. The whole idea behind it was, when we started, it was just like, once we start, I don't want to stop. I want to see if we can go hours in one song. And I don't care if we switch out, musicians. I just tell everybody, let me be the worst guy on stage and we'll be okay. That's generally how I look at it.
But it's also more than, it's they do the background harmonies with you. They do, everyone knows what key the song is in immediately. How does that all work?
Because generally I sing everything in A. And
you do? Okay.
We'll call it Yes Band.
Okay.
There's your improv stuff for you.
I would call it more the Arthur Fonzarelli band.
Yeah, we just, you know, it's just
everything's in A, guys. Everything.
Friends of Canners. No, I sing a lot in A. I got it.
What? All right. So far, Wayne's got one. I'll give you one, Morty, for the complaint about broccoli. One riff to one riff. I've stolen so much, Morty, when watching the Kibitz Room. It was like, oh yeah, I love that. The energy, the continuous leading almost, where it's like, I always, when I was working with LMNOP or other bands, is like, you have to be the director. And I mean, the guys know you, and they've been playing with you so long that it's like, they know what your hand movements mean, and they know when to bring it down, bring it up. Yeah. It's really cool.
I mean, you know, I don't want to, I'm just one of the fellas, or whoever's up there, women, you know, whoever's up there at the time. It's just the collective, the Friends of Canners Kibitz Room. And as of now, it's been 33 years since we started. So and I started with Jordan, who has been the guest with me on the Steely Dan episode, my partner in All Day Sucker, amongst the other guys. You know,
I've seen All Day Sucker, by the way, guys.
Yeah, we came up in high school. So we started it, which, by the way, I just want to ask you, Wayne, you're born in LA, but I know you didn't grow up here.
Correct.
Where were you born? What hospital?
I will tell you, a good question. Josh never cared about any of this.
I don't. We got to talk about Quicksilver Messenger Bike Service.
It's called the Hospital of the Good Samaritan.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Good
so you
Sam.
weren't born at Cedars?
No, Good Sam.
The old
Sam.
Cedars of Lebanon. Okay.
By the way, the same hospital that Robert F. Kennedy died in.
Wow. I did a gig at the Ambassador. I'll tell you that. They wouldn't let us in the kitchen.
Okay. That's the hotel he got shot in.
Yeah, we got to do a movie, the old band.
This is very good, because we're speaking about 1967 and 68. This is
I'm tying it together, which is also the year I was born.
Oh, what? Okay.
Yeah. No, we did a movie that they shot. It wasn't a great movie, but it was an incredible cast. The cast is like insane. It's called The Immortals, and the band is in it, and it's a flashback when that was very popular with Quentin Tarantino. But we got to shoot on stage, lip syncing, but performing in the Coconut Grove, which, if you're from LA or you're anywhere, that's such an important room. I think my mom
used to do the Oscars. Yeah. They used to do the Oscars there.
Yeah, it's just an insane history, and that it was still there.
I know this is not.
No, wait, hold on.
We'll get to San Francisco.
When Angela was still alive and we used to go down Wilshire, I remember, because the Brown Derby was across the street from the Ambassador Hotel. Is that what you said? Where he got, now it's just a huge memorial. But that area, it's which is what, Koreatown, right?
Well, it's Wilshire, Miracle Mile, I think.
That's Miracle Mile. I thought Miracle Mile was from La Brea on Wilshire on, right?
I think you're right, Josh. I think it's past the Miracle. We're into.
Is it?
Yeah, there's a.
Well, I need a miracle every day. There's your sentence.
Could be. And this brings us to the Grateful Dead, which is part of the scene.
Yes.
When you need a ticket for a show, what do you say?
I told Josh.
I need a miracle.
He did. A miracle. What did you get a miracle for? Stain?
So, all right. So Morty, because Morty is the one that schooled me on, and I'm going to school all of my listeners. The Fleece Army deserve to know about TickPick. They are not a sponsor, but they should be. They should be. JT, set that shit up. Brian, our DEI hire, fucking do the research. No, TickPick is, Morty is just, he said it was the last resort to get rid of tickets, and there's always a cheap one for any event. I got Sting, literally $22 for a seat. I got 2 of them for $44 and got in to see that show. Anytime I've used TickPick, it's been great, all encompassing. It doesn't give you the charges are included in the initial price that you see. And so he was the one that he goes, dude, it's like you buy tickets sometimes and just, either they're going to sell them cheap or you go to the show and there's a guy out there just holding up that one finger. And then I went to see, who is it? Was it Mark? Oh, it was Marcus King. I went to see Marcus King on Sunday, and the guy, I had an extra seat, and the guy was like, please, and he's holding up the one, and I gave it to him.
You were the miracle.
I gave I blessed the miracle. It was, I think it was it Yom Kippur on this weekend?
It was Beshared.
Beshared. What'd you call me?
Yeah, you gave that karma away.
So what I love and I mean this, like, these are the episodes that I look forward to, because I really do. You know how much I love the two of you guys. I look forward to I talk to Morty almost before every episode. He has directed me or helped me write or just really worked with me on every episode we've done, basically since, besides when you were working on the record, like, it was just me and you have been together, and I value and love that more than anything. And then Wayne, you're my fucking bench. You're the guy. Put me in, coach. I'm ready to play.
Bay Area.
Today,
Bay Area, exactly.
So, but
by the way, not at Monterey Pop Festival.
No, and never went to New Orleans before he wrote every song that sounds like he was born on the bayou.
The swamp. Yeah.
Hadn't actually been there.
No, just the reason we're going off on this, Josh, just to bring it all around. There was a crazy scene in San Francisco the Quicksilver is part of. So this scene is very much like even the scene in LA with the Doors and the Byrds and all of that kind of stuff was like these crazy music moments that happen with bebop in Midtown Manhattan in the 40s. And like these scenes like pop up. Obviously, I'm sure you remember what happened in Seattle in the late 80s, early 90s.
Sound.
So they are right in the middle of that. Would you say that's correct, Morty?
I mean, I've talked to Josh about sort of, and you'll forgive me if I start lapsing into the vocabulary, which you hate reading, if to the hegemonic sort of place of scenes where all of a sudden everybody seems to just run to. Now there's an A&R thing where like, there were two bands out of, and then all the schmucks run over there to try to sign people. But then there are organic scenes in San Francisco, and there's reasoning behind it. I mean, the further the Merry Pranksters, like a lot of that stuff ended up, the Beats sort of pilgrimage migrated to San Francisco because Los Angeles was the way it was and New York was the way it was. And it was sort of a city with hustle and bustle, but also you could survive there and live there, where in Los Angeles, it didn't have the same sort of, and there's a lot of college culture.
Well, give us an examples of other music scenes besides the ones I said that were just
let's talk about Liverpool exploding in the early 60s.
The Mersey sound, right?
Yeah, Mersey sound. Let's talk about Manchester. The Manchester scene in the late 80s, mid 80s, really, Factory. And who would that be? Let's see, starting with like New Order, Joy Division to New Order.
Okay.
Buzzcocks are from there. The Manchester Free Trade, which is also the famous Dylan concert, but the Manchester Free Trade, where the Sex Pistols played, and in the audience, the Smiths. If you believe folklore, the Buzzcocks helped set the gig up for the Sex Pistols to play. So you've got, Howard Devoto
but I thought the Sex Pistols were 70s.
Yeah, but that was 76. They played Manchester, and then that carried over from the Manchester bands to that sound, that very dark. Because remember, Manchester, similarly to Liverpool, more Manchester is very much kind of dark. It's a very city, we've talked about, it's like growing up in a town where it's industrial, and it's not bleak, but England had, but anyway, so Manchester had that, which led into, the Smiths, which is why Oasis were so reverent. I mean, Oasis are a Manchester band.
Okay.
They carry the lineage down there. I mean, Los Angeles has been the hardest place. I was born in LA, and so is my partner in All Day Sucker, Jordan. And Los Angeles is one of the hardest places to be from, because we are literally in the backyard of A&R of every. It's like movie industry.
So are they not trying to sign bands that are local? Is that what you were saying?
It's just that you're used to, this. You guys perform in LA. You're used to this.
Oh yeah,
we're having a good time at a show.
What Morty's doing, by the way, is if you're just listening to this, arms crossed, giving you the act. I always say I can do what you do look.
Yeah, which is absolutely, the weird thing about being from Los Angeles.
Hold on. I'm just going to stop you. So you're saying, even though all these Los Angeles bands, the Doors and Motley Crue.
Well, let's talk about that. Jim Morrison's from Florida. Axl Rose is from Indiana.
Right.
almost every one of the bands, none of them are actually okay. Stephen Perkins is an LA guy. Steven Adler is an LA guy.
No, but I'm saying, but their bands were
and members of the tribe.
Those bands were discovered and signed in LA, right?
Which does happen. But, and, you know, I'm not saying that people didn't grow up here or come here, but most of the time, Perry Farrell, not from LA.
New York.
You know what I mean? There's a lot of these people that
course.
are thought of as the quintessential LA bands. And there are only like 6 people that are actually from Los Angeles in that. But if you say the New York band, it'll rarely be like, oh, that guy in that New York band. And it'll be the guy that came from Illinois, or a guy came from, you know, Lou Reed, you know, is like a Long Island guy. You know what I mean? As a, you know, that's a New York guy. You wouldn't say, even if he came up in New York, well, you know, he's actually from.
I always think of it. I always think of all bands as like crazy kids that didn't get along with their parents that moved to LA to start a band. And next thing you know, you're in the Eagles. You know, it's like that's
none
always
of the Eagles. One guy is
right
close to peripherally LA.
Right. But that's not what I'm talking. I'm talking about, you're talking about these scenes that pop up, and we're going to talk about the San Francisco one in the mid to
like how Eddie Vedder ended up going to Seattle, but Eddie Vedder is a San Diego guy, or Illinois, whatever, but a San Diego guy. But when you think of Pearl Jam, you go quintessentially Seattle.
Of course.
Even though he just went up there.
Right. But I'm talking about more where A&R band guys go to sign these bands.
Yeah, well, LA, they're here, so they rarely have to do much. They just leave the office and go out that night. And most of the time, bands tour into town. I mean, I'm saying that's been. I remember seeing, you were talking about Stone Temple Pilots, so I have to indulge you. I saw them play at Peanuts, 7969 Santa Monica Boulevard in 91. Maybe like their first show, and everybody went, oh, you got to go see this band. And I'm talking about, we were the backroom band in the 80s. This is like a little dance club. Now it's Delilah, but it was like a little dance club on Santa Monica near Fairfax. And I was just shooting pool and going like this and watching Stone Temple Pilots playing with his bullhorn. And, you know, I mean, that's the thing about, or Viper Room, you know, having grown up playing the Viper Room or the Central before, but the Viper Room, I saw everybody on a tiny stage. I mean, everything from Harvey Danger to,
well,
you know,
LA.
James to, well, that's like I was saying, if you come up in New York or you're in Washington, you know, when you come up at these markets, you see that. But LA is a place people end up. It's just rare to see people that grow up in the industry making it here. That's why I'm sort of so protective and love in native Angelenos, because it really is something that you don't get a lot of. You know what I mean? Like you don't get a lot of people that are from here and flex that. And I'm sure areas have that. You know what I mean? I'm sure that's, you know, thing about sports. I'm like, man, I would love sports if everybody that was on the team had to be from there or had to be there 10 years. Because then the next year you're like, Shaq. And then the next year's on another team. You're like, fuck that motherfucker. And I'm going, but you loved him. So I don't know shit about sports, but
so San Francisco though, to take it there. So Wayne, I mean, because what's funny is like this is acid rock. What we're talking about. This is the Jefferson Airplane. This is Santana. This is the Grateful Dead. So who's the first one, and like how do all those other bands we talk about, which I just mentioned.
This band, the Grateful Dead, all of these bands came out of the folky scene, the folk music scene. Even the Grateful Dead, I know. You have to understand, when the Beatles came, like folk music was so big, what Dylan was doing and all of that was the music. And all of these guys are poor, walking around with their folk guitars, no one signing anybody. And then the Beatles come, they plug in, then year later in Newport, Bob Dylan plugs in, and like, oh, this is where it's going. So, you know, the Grateful Dead was a jug band before they plugged in. And so I'm not kidding. So once they plugged in, and I think it was a combination, I'd love to have Morty's thoughts on this, combination of the aesthetic of San Francisco, Golden Gate Park, free love, and I will say LSD was legal until the end of 65 or something like that. So
right,
LSD
it was an experimental. It was something that people were still not sure if it was a narcotic or if it was,
right.
it was like
Substance
prescribed.
one.
It was like the way ecstasy was being prescribed. MDMA was being prescribed by psychologists.
But there was a guy, there was a local guy in San Francisco who was able to synthesize it. What?
Owsley.
Yes, yes. And he was also, so I feel like that guy is a key part to the whole story. I don't know if absolutely. Because not only was he making LSD, so that's where psychedelia and acid rock comes from, but he also was recording bands. He was like an engineer. So when we think of the Grateful Dead, which is part of this Quicksilver Jefferson Airplane crew, and people still getting high on acid, or now it might be MDMA or other kinds of drugs, and recording it was all kind of this weird free love hippie. And then there was this guy named Timothy Leary, who was this very smart guy from Harvard who was championing this scene, and San Francisco became the epicenter of young hippies, young people that wanted to live an alternative lifestyle. Would you say that's true? An alternative lifestyle?
I mean, Timothy Leary coined the phrase tune in, turn on, and drop out. I mean, he was a Harvard professor. And by the way, I don't know that he was tenured, because essentially he was fired. But I mean, you have a guy who's in his, and by the way, being on this end of adulthood, Josh, now you're at this point too, this end of adult, it wasn't like he was 60 when this happened. He was an adult, but of a generation where they had gone through, like we've talked about that with Josh and I talk a lot about these episodes, and it's funny because we've had these things like Buffalo Springfield and Neil Young, and they all very much circle this area. So when I refer back to things that we've talked about, Josh, I'm sort of like, now I can put pins in it. And you have a Harvard professor, a generation of even pre-baby boomers, the great generation, where what we're going through now is hardships. These guys only grew up with war. They only grew up in the middle of, like, they either fought so they would see Vietnam happening again, and they'd be like, this isn't even a good war. Like, this isn't even like a fundamental war where we're changing, where we're dealing with ethos. We're dealing with moral, whatever you want to say it is. Now it's just over bullshit, really. I mean, Vietnam. So, and they're seeing young people, and he's a Harvard professor. So when all of a sudden you give somebody a drug that it gives such a profound effect on your psyche, I don't know. I mean, have you guys, everyone's done acid here. Have we all done acid?
I want to do it again. I've talked about it.
I would advise against it.
No, I love mushrooms.
Yeah, but it's different.
I have it right here. Right.
I would not.
What is that? What is that right there? What am I looking at?
It's a 10 whatever the fuck. There's some Russian lettering. It's a LSD.
Oh, stick that in your mouth.
It's a fruit chew. It's like a microdose. But I'm going to do it of acid. Yeah, I have a guy.
Let me explain something to you. When we were, and this is a big thing about this music scene. I don't do drugs. I haven't in years. I did lots of them, most of them. There was a time when
crack.
The experience.
Do crack.
I didn't do crack, but I hung out with people that did.
Wayne loves crack.
The reason I didn't do crack, though, is crack was already, if you can believe it, crack was sort of coming into its own when I had quit. And so I didn't feel compelled to have to try something. I saw Boys in the Hood. I'm not sucking a dick for some drugs. You know what I mean? If I do it, it's only going to be extracurricular and for fun.
Tofu.
Right. So
because the guy has nice abs. I get it.
That's the only reason why. A girl's got to have some fucking baseline. No, if I'm not eating a steak for Josh, I'm not sucking a dick for crack.
Yeah, he's got and all I got depends on it. He won't eat a lamb shank.
Yeah. No. So it's that before you would do drugs, you would go.
By the way, can I just say real quickly before
what do you got?
I just want to say that, Josh, if you were dying and I needed to eat broccoli and Brussels sprouts, I'd do it in a second.
Thank you, buddy. Thank you.
That's
vice versa.
Back to
Yeah,
you.
that's true. And so when you would do drugs, nowadays you could literally, like, the fact that I talk to people and they go, well, here's what happens. You smoke this and it'll do blip, 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 blip. Here's what they said. Do this and stay the fuck inside and don't go in your car. Don't look in a mirror. That's what they told you before you would dose. Nobody knew what would happen to you. Nowadays, you could literally, that fruit chew in Russian says, here's what it's going to do. Light colors, and then a sprinkling of, you might have a moment of existential paranoia, but God loves you. And if you don't believe in God, you're one with nature. And then as you come down, like, none of that existed. You took a trip and you found out how it was, whether or not you called your parents from jail. That's how you did drugs.
I have a question for Josh. Have you done Somebody to Love or White Rabbit yet? I assume
we did
volunteers.
No, we've done volunteers. We did volunteers, but we haven't done. Is that, I'm assuming that's going to come up on the list, right?
Surrealistic Pillow, I would guess, is going to
be high.
First of all, let me tell you why those songs. Again, I didn't memorize the list, but don't forget the list. The reason, the raison d'etre of this podcast is Rolling Stone magazine, which also came out of San Francisco, also came out of that scene, also was, so that they wouldn't have those two songs on there would seem impossible to me, because they were so fundamental to this explosion that was going on, fueled also by RCA Records. I think they were a RCA band. Is that right, Jefferson Airplane?
I think so. Did you? They might have been.
Yeah.
But yeah, the thing, I mean, like we were saying, Surrealistic Pillow is like the Jefferson Airplane record that people bring. Like, I was shocked Volunteers was on, and I don't know that it stayed on the list because it's sort of such a hodgepodge record of interesting. But, it brings us to sort of this scene. So let's talk about, San Francisco. First of all, I have to say one thing to Wayne, because I never get a chance. Every time I see Wayne, I'm either DJing, spinning, or I'm singing. And so I'm trying to, and I have to say, I'm an incredible admirer of yours besides first of all, we are with somebody, and I'll explain why. You have an Emmy. My daughter's middle name is Carlin. Like, B's middle name is Carlin.
I did that. I remember
because I grew up with such reverence for stand-up comedy and comedy in general and music. And I think people were always shocked, even with us, all three of us are in our own ways and very fundamentally musicians. It was as important. Like, when I grew up, every entertainment because also Wayne wrote an incredible book about stand-up, but at one point in time, an entertainer did everything. You didn't have the option of just being like a thing. Like, you were not a multi-hyphenate. It was considered, if you were an entertainer, you sang, you danced, you performed, and you could do any of those things well enough that you could be entertaining, vaudeville and pre-vaudeville. And so when I used to see the Marx Brothers, and I was like, they're all musicians. So they all have the heart. And remember, music is truth. Comedy is lies because it's exaggerations. But when you get to music is absolute truth, which is why when I talked to Josh about when we frame this music, how important this is, because somebody out there, even if we're like Quicksilver Messenger Service, what the fuck? Somebody out there had their baby to it, or it was played at their dad's funeral, or they have sex to it, or it's that important because it connects you immediately to a moment in time and truth. It's almost olfactory in how the essence of it comes into you. Comedy is ephemeral. Even if you love it, it has to catch you at the right moment with surprise. Music wears into you. And so when I look at, Wayne's eye for archivism, for research, because when I talked to him, he's like, oh, I've done a lot of research on it. And we had just found out like 2 days before, and I went, that's why I love Wayne. That's why in our, when we have conversations and when we talk, I'm always like, this is a guy like me. He throws himself at it and he goes, oh, there's one bit of light that hasn't been darkened in here. I need to know this because I know about Jefferson Airplane. I know about the Dead, even if it's perfunctory. I don't really know about Quicksilver Messenger Service. I need to know because their names keep coming up.
Yep.
And all of this. So I'm just giving you praise. And he
Thank
has
you, brother.
which he
Carlin.
deserves. Which
The
he deserves.
Carlin. He produced the Carlin.
It's great. It's great.
Documentaries. I'm sorry.
But Morty, no, please. And everybody, if you haven't seen it, please watch it. And he's working on a new one about Mel Brooks, which, you know.
By the way, didn't even know that, but.
Oh, silent movie. Fuck yeah, dude. Yeah, when I reached out to you, Wayne, about this, it was so funny because you were like, please find someone else. I don't know this. And then I was like, I got no one, dude. And then you're like, all right, let me listen. And then you came back, fuck yeah, acid rock, let's do this. I don't think you said fuck yeah, but it was probably the tame version of fuck yeah.
Yeah, no question. Can we start with the last song on the album? Can we start,
dude? Lead however you want to go. So but I mean, before we even get into the record, though, like so I have like the spiel basically is so this Happy Trails, this record, this is the second record from Quicksilver Messenger Service. Most of the album was recorded from 2 performances at the Fillmore East and the Fillmore West.
Again, I have to stop you right there.
Please.
Again, this is all this bigger picture of this local promoter, this local Florence Ziegfeld named Bill Graham, who like really was the promoter of this scene that expanded all the way east to New York City. So sorry, I just wanted to
know.
When you say the Fillmore, that's his venue, right?
Were there multiple Fillmores?
There's an interest. Yeah, there was a Fillmore East and a Fillmore West. And the funny thing about it is, not to I don't want to get in the weeds. So if I'm not mistaken, just to making sure of this, at one point in time, they were playing concerts for Bill Graham, the San Francisco scene, the Dead and the Airplane and whatever. And they had decided, I think the Avalon Ballroom, I think they had decided, fuck, this guy, you know, he's ripping everybody off in a nice way. I mean, he's good at what he does, but he's sort of ripping we could do this. And so they start, I think it was the Avalon Ballroom, and someone will tell me if I'm wrong. Teacher H, Mr. H, you know, our ardent supporter of the 500. They started their own place and it was a dismal failure. And then Bill Graham took it over and it became the Fillmore West. So at one point in time, they thought, we could do this. Fuck you. We can make a show. And then it just was not what hippies should be involved in, you know? So Bill Graham took it back over, and they were basically like, if we're going to get ripped off, at least get ripped off by the guy that really does do us well. You know what I mean? Rather than what could be than a Morris Levy or somebody at Birdland in New York or whatever. So they have the Fillmore East and West. The West was in New York. I think it was it St. Mark's, or was it?
I believe.
The East. Was it St. Mark's? Is that where it was? By the Actors Studio, I think.
Yeah, it's down
or
there.
at least where one was. I think so.
Well, anyway, go ahead, Josh. I just feel like there's so many elements to this story that really combine to create this musical explosion that still reverberates today.
So I mean, I have like the bullshit, you know, that Adam has helped me get, you know, about how this was recorded, but you know, because I keep wondering, it's like, why is this band on the list? And then it's just one long song, but it's
side one is.
But I love it. I loved this. I listened to this on a drive a few months ago. I dug the shit out of it. I listened to it this whole week. I dug the shit out of it. I listened to it again this morning. And there's parts in it where I'm like, this is phenomenal. This is a phenomenal
element. There's another element to this scene that I'm going to
take me, please.
Tell me, Morty, tell me if I'm wrong about this. But one is the sort of the birth of FM radio, and FM radio played albums as opposed to singles, which was AM radio. You go into the top 100, you're going to be on an AM radio. You get Casey Kasem, that's AM radio. But albums starting in the 60s and then it blew up in the 70s. Was like FM. We're going to play this whole album. I can't think of. I know they had one minor hit, Quicksilver, but
later, Fresh Air. Like
later. Exactly. So
the interesting thing about this,
they weren't a singles band, and also I would say, and this is just a theory of mine, was the kind of explosion of, obviously we're talking about the drugs for the live scene, so that's what it's capturing, a live drug scene, okay, in San Francisco, New York. but also for the home listener was high fidelity stereo equipment, Hardin, Cardin, and all these companies really making these great stereos and headphones. Kids were starting to listen to music with headphones.
Yeah,
so
prior to that, remember they used even I'll remember, and I'm sure Wayne, you know, the transistor radio, the one little tchotchke thing in your ear,
of course,
with the corn, you know, or sports, whatever. You just have the one thing in your ear. The idea of stereo coming out of a device hadn't really, even when remember the Beatles did not look at any of their albums as anything other than mono, because that was just industry standard technology at the time. The Beatles didn't mix any of their records in stereo until White Album or Abbey Road. It wasn't a consideration. The records, the masters were sent to Capitol, in EMI in England, were sent to Capitol, where they were made into sometimes stereo, which is why when you were in your dad's car and you were listening to Paperback Writer and one speaker was out, you only heard half the stereo, because it wasn't true stereo. What they did is they would send it to America, and then American mixers who had nothing to do with England, with the Beatles not in the room like they were for the original mixing of mono, would just go, fuck it. Bass on the right, drums on the right, tambourine, vocal on the left. It's stereo. Put it out. Because people in America were buying stereo equipment,
and also
so they
were buying stereo equipment and stereo albums. And this is something I remember when I was a kid, were $1 more than mono albums.
Yeah, there's stereo. The Beach Boys in stereo. I mean, remember Brian Wilson's deaf in one ear, so he could never mix
anyway.
So he was.
We listened to. Well, hold on, before we get into that, I don't know, because I was trying to figure out who was one of the first people to take advantage of the headphone music. When we did the only Pink Floyd record we've done that had Syd Barrett on it, which was that Piper at the Gates of Dawn?
Piper at the Gates of Dawn.
Yeah, and there's a song on it at the end where you're listening to it on headphones and it's going back and forth, but it's like and you hear this it was awesome. It was really awesome.
Yeah, they played a lot with that. It became. I mean, you'll find that a lot in comedy records of that era. You know that when records, I mean, really, Firesign Theater became just. I mean, I'm such an absolute. I adore those first 4 or 5 albums, but Head radio and Head, I'm over here now. I'm over here.
When you say Head, can you explain that to?
Head is like it was drug lingo. Yeah, it was people that were turned on. Would be heads,
right?
So,
and by the way, the
Podhead,
yeah. The Monkees, wasn't that the name of their film?
Yeah, but I think that what they talk about, how Rafelson and Schneider love the idea that if they put that record out, the next thing they could say is by the guys that gave you head.
Oh, Jesus! All right, gotcha.
Yeah, but it really, that was literally in the folklore. I mean, even if it's apocryphal, that's been the story now for the Monkees story with Jack Nicholson.
So anyway, there's this again. Yeah. I'm more trying to figure out, why did this happen? Like, what?
San Francisco. I think it's the same thing as
so
homeless.
It's a number of things.
I think it's that weather is good in certain areas, and you can live in a park. Like I literally, if you drop out and you go somewhere, you don't survive winter in fucking New York
Detroit,
or
New York.
Why people are always saying now, like, why is the homeless population in Los Angeles? I go, can you think of a better? Besides Hawaii, can you think of a better place to live in a tent all year round? I mean, how many days of rain do we have? 8? There's no snow.
Of course.
Yeah. So if you're going to go someplace and maybe not have your prospects locked up, go west, young man. And so a lot of these East Coast people would travel over and end up. And so with that, and we were talking about, Wayne was talking about the folk scene. Remember, folk music, we've done this before. Once again, now we can go back to the Dylan record. Now we can go back to Simon and Garfunkel doing those records.
Take us.
Music was just, you listen to it. 1955, really, the bomb came down. And as you just did Elvis Presley, the bomb came down in 1955. Young people had disposable income. They were coming up. They were generally born in the either late 30s, but essentially the 40s. And when they were about 10 years old, 11, 12, rock and roll started happening at the same time that they were really the first generation of television. They were the first people where the medium was not leave your house for, or imagine what people looked like. Or now people took consumers, they became consumers. People took advantage of it. They were a block of people. They had disposable income. They were into pop culture. They were becoming very aware of everything else that was going on globally because of television. And they weren't tied to what their parents had or what their parents listened to, or everybody in a communal, Sunday night around the radio listening to whatever. Now they could experience it for themselves. And they were in this period where Black music, which had previously been very segregated, if you weren't like Elvis in an area where there just were Black people performing, now it started seeping in. Instead of race records existing, which is sort of how they segregated music, and coming to town, music was now pervasive. It entered culture, which was why the KKK and all these people were so against rock and roll, is because what they were worried about, which ultimately happened, thank God, was that we would find out that people were just people, and they all were singing about fucking and hanging out and being in love and broken hearts in their own colloquial way. Now you end up with music coming in, and people like Elvis Presley, who similarly to what happened with Eminem years later, brought kind of the sound of Black music that were previously listening to like Pat Boone or Perry Como, which were doing incredibly anodyne, just crapped out, diluted white version. Womp babaloo bop, a womp bam boom. I mean, the fact that that even exists is like a parody. It's like the Schmengi Brothers or something on SCTV. Was that Little Richard, when you hear that, is the absolute essence. And he takes it from Mahalia Jackson, and he takes it from, but just hearing just hearing that secular cut through, once you establish, it's like Marilyn Manson. Once you establish religious iconography or any kind of, this is sanctified. Then when you strike through it, it shatters it. So if you're like, Jesus, 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 fucking, that explodes. And for ears that were used to listening to Glenn Miller, or we're used to listening to swing music or just big band or light motif music, to have that Black culture of music, just that cut in. This record's a prime example. There are 2 Bo Diddley songs on this record. There's
one of those Bo Diddley songs is 27 minutes.
And a fucking Roy Rogers song. Like, you want to talk about white and black? The record ends with a Roy Rogers song, but starts with a Bo Diddley song.
So is this like I'm not saying call it a joke record, but is this like just guys fucking around and being like, hey man, let's
again, no, it's not. I mean, the side A is definitely a jam band record. Is definitely an example of a jam. Like, we're gonna have this theme, as you said, we're gonna have this motif, and we're gonna just work our way around it in a number of different ways. Right. So jam bands still exist. So that is a thing, whether people like jam bands or not. I think the appeal of that is, I think it has to do with drugs a little bit, that you kind of just get lost. It's not about, I'm going to play, I don't know, Hotel California or, Witchy Woman or a song. This is just like an experience they're selling. I assume that's what people get out of jam bands. Josh, do you listen to jam bands?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like a huge fan, but I've been to the show and I watch.
What do you get? What do you think people get out of those extended versions?
It's a rave. It's a hippie rave. It's like you do drugs and you dance. You know what I mean? It's the same shit saying. Drugs, I think it's I think a rave. A rave is like, having gone to them and then also being older and watching people go or whatever the fuck. It's like, it's about people love dancing and what goes great with dancing, drugs. So like, what goes great with dancing and drugs? A beat. So there it is. And I think like listening to or seeing the Grateful Dead or seeing Fish or this new band that everybody's talking about, Goose. Yeah, everybody's like kind of like it's about the party. It was like I said
or whatever that is.
I went to go I went to go see Stevie Wonder the other day, and I was like, oh, this is like an old black person's rave. Like this is just everybody is just dancing and having the greatest time ever. And whether
but I'm talking about right, unlike Stevie Wonder, who has specific songs, I feel like jam bands are more. Here's our adventure with this tune. Here's our adventure with this tune. That's why they're called a jam band, as opposed to
and I think
Stevie Wonder's like going to play.
Yes, for sure. You're 100% right. Yeah. But I think ultimately what it comes down to is it's about the dance. It's about the, you're riding on this, the jam band is riding on this tightrope where they're experimenting and they're playing together. And it's almost Miles Davis Bitches Brew, where it's like 90% of it is crap, but there are 3 moments in it that you're like, holy shit, that all came together. And now it's this incredible little piece of music. And then it breaks apart again. That's what I always thought listening to that, of why that album's important.
Think about okay, here's the thing that let's contextualize this. When you went out, it was your communal social experience. You went to a dance. People nowadays can't imagine that discotheques and things. We are living in 12th version of what it originally was. When you went to the Whiskey A Go-Go and a band played, like you look now and you see these like old videos or like a, what is it, Blow Up or whatever. And you see like, here's the Yardbirds playing in a thing. And there's people like in the front going like this. Yeah. It wasn't shticky. When the Doors played, it wasn't shticky with a girl dancing on, in a go-go thing. That was what you did. You went there to meet women and dance and have a Coca-Cola. And that was the extension of the school dance, a discotheque. The live entertainment was because it wasn't being a DJ. And you know this, Josh, I'm giving a jam band experience. When I start playing, I don't stop for 4 hours. I'm giving you one piece of whatever I'm giving you. It's 1,000 songs, but what I'm giving you is the balloon doesn't hit the floor. So a lot of these bands took, especially this band, amongst other ones, took the ethos of jazz and the ethos of experimentation, but the ethos of communication within an instrumental blend, which is if you're listening to the drummer, and it happens on the first track, when we get to it, is you hear at one point in time, he changes. So the song starts with a boom, 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 boom. So he goes to 4/4 at a certain point. Now, if the bass player is like, no, I'm not going to do that. And it's not the improv of yes, and he's not going with it. You end up with, what's the word I'm looking for? With dissonance in what they're doing. You have people doing this. You have somebody walks in and goes, I'm a baker. And he goes, no, you're not. And then that's where the scene ends. But if you're on stage and the drummer goes, now I was doing this, but now I gave it a backbeat. Now the bass player goes, oh, fuck. We're doing this now. Greg just went to a backbeat. Instead of me being do, 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 do. Now the guitar player's influence. So the jam is not just let's do 27 minutes of whatever, because this jam was cut down on this record. You can hear there's moments of editing where it what is there principally, the meat of it is there. But what they do in it is improvisational. And what's great about this band versus stuff like the Grateful Dead is I didn't feel listening to this first song, which is, Who Do You Love, which is a stand. You've heard George Thorogood do it. You've heard a million people. I walk 25 miles of Bob. It's a Bo song, and we can get into Bo Diddley because we've done that before. But what you end up with is the framework of which to build what's going to be whatever it ends up becoming. And maybe one night it's 5 minutes. Maybe one night it's 30 minutes. What was so good about this band and the way they played is they were very good musicians and they worked very well together. And unlike stuff like the Grateful Dead, where I felt sometimes it got a little weedy and meandering, which is why a reason they never appealed to me. There was something about this band that still felt like a beat group.
Yeah, this never
bands like that is
okay.
Yeah, this never felt like it meandered. Everything on this record did feel like it was a part of a thing, and that thing was either move the song along or like. And if you're saying, these guys, to be in a jam band, I'm assuming you can't be some bullshit musician. You have to have an understanding of music. But you know what I mean. Like you can't.
Yeah, of course.
You're not like the guys in Fish know their instruments. They know how to play them, and they know where they're going, and they understand jazz. They understand rock and hip hop. You have to, and I think there has to be. Like these guys are talented, and if they're also, you got to be talented enough to be able to they're going this way. I'm going this way. I'm following them. So,
and like I said, there was stuff like I have no desire to listen to Velvet Underground on some of their stuff that's a little more of the early, like esoteric kind of out there, just because I even though John Cale, genius, Penn, I love you. Even though John Cale is genius and is incredibly musical and everything, the drummer wasn't particularly competent. Mo Tucker wasn't particularly competent. It wasn't like it was listening to kind of art and with this, I hear the interplay. I've listened to this first song many times, and the interplay of where, just to give you some names so you know this, what's amazing about this band is, so just because this is the fascinating thing, what you end up with is this dude named Dino Valenti, okay? Yeah. So you have this guy in San Francisco in like 65 or earlier named Dino Valenti, and here's the greatest thing about him. You hear his name and you're like, when's this guy going to change his name to something hip? Like
I was going to say, no, dude, he sounds like every like executive producer of a 70s porn movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah. He also, he sounds like an adjunct member of
7.
Yeah. He sounds like an adjunct member of like the Young Rascals. You know what I mean? Hey, he's a guy, like he's one of the guys, like the 5th season. You know what I mean? Dino Valenti. Here's the funny thing. His name is actually Chester Powers. He picked that as a fake name. That his pseudonym, and with different spelling, was Dino Valenti. And so he goes, hey, I want to put this band together. And he finds this guy who he knows, and he's like, yeah, let's put this thing together. And these guys sort of assemble, and then he gets busted. He gets busted and does a stint. So
in Folsom, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, the guy gets busted
for marijuana.
Yeah, back when that was a thing. Now Josh has more of it in his pocket than all of the Grateful Dead carried in their fucking
I have so much in that closet, dude. It's
exactly.
Like, no, I don't smoke. I barely smoke.
Prison with murderers.
Nick gets busted, and these guys decide, hey, well, we kind of put something together.
Dino's away.
Yeah. And by the way, Dino's, if you guys are fans of the Youngbloods, or if you know anything about 60s, come on, people now, smile on your brother, everybody. He wrote that song and had to sell the rights to keep his ass out of jail to get the money for his lawyers, for his law case. So he never got the money for that song, which even Perry Farrell, they do it on Jane's Addiction. Kurt Cobain does that. On when he goes, come on, people now, smile on your brother, in that one little snippet.
Did he do that to give him money?
No, Nick wouldn't.
Dino gets no money.
Dino didn't get the bread from it. He sold it, you know. And by the way, he also takes credit. Go on.
Yeah, just a little tie-in. Sold it to the manager of the Kingston Trio, who were one of Capitol's biggest. Again, back to the folk scene that was going on. They came out of San Francisco. Yes, they looked like college kids because they were, or had just gotten out of college. That was a big part of the folk music revival that happened in the 60s. But again, Capitol Records is the same label that signs not only the Beatles, does those stereo versions of it, but also obviously Quicksilver is a Capitol.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, in England, it's EMI and the Beach Boys. I mean, Capitol is Capitol, and then Reprise was Capitol. Sinatra's label was through Capitol. So you end up with
the weird convergences of all of the
exactly, and that's why they're saying there's also a great podcast. I mean, I've said this before on here. Andrew Hickey.
Can I guess? Can I guess which one?
Yes,
you're going to say?
Yeah,
Is it The history of music and 500 songs?
Rock music and 500 songs. And I give Andrew Hickey credit every time I can. His podcast is exhaustively researched, which I know Wayne and I love of that. And he just is absolutely sensitive to it. But you hear stuff, which in the Hey Joe episode that we talked about when we had Lenny Kaye on, Dino also is the guy that took credit for the writing of Hey Joe, even though it had been passed around for years and years. He's the guy that eventually went, oh, wait, nobody really has their name on this? Great. Boom. And then has his name as the writer, even though the Leaves had a hit with it and whoever else before it got to Jimmy. So we end up with this guy. He goes to jail. So these other guys are putting together a guy. There's a guy named Dave Freiberg, who's a bass player. And there's a guy named, there's John Cipollina. And then there's Greg, Elmore. And they basically, people are living in Sausalito. They're in the, they're younger guys. This guy goes to jail and they go, well, we got to put a band together for this guy. He gets out. They sort of start forming this band. And then there's this other guy, Dave Freiberg, who's a bass player who can sing and everything. And then they're like, okay, we're going to put the band. And then Dave gets busted and then gets busted and goes away for a while. And the band sort of converges. And then when Dave gets out, they're like, well, while you were gone, and he only really knows like one of the guys. So he's kind of like, well, this band that we started putting together, why don't we, like, everyone's doing it. The Airplane, and then there's bands like the Charlatans and Moby Grape. Skip Spence, who was the drummer in Airplane, ends up starting Moby Grape. So there's a lot of this just, if you're there, it's what you do.
Big Brother was...
Yeah, Big Brother and the whole... If you're there, this is what you do. Marty Ballin...
And also because these records were selling. These records...
Yeah, they started coming up.
They started selling.
Well, this record, if I'm not mistaken, hit number 27 on the Billboard, certified gold, over 500,000 copies sold in the United States in 1992. That's crazy.
By 92.
That's what I meant. But no, I know. But they were saying that's by 1992, that's 500,000.
Yeah, so you ended up with these guys that saw what was going on. And let's be honest, if you keep getting busted and you're in that scene, you're like, well, I'm a musician. I know how to play. Remember, at this point in time, there were some people that weren't great musicians. Bob Weir, when he started, wasn't a great musician. Jerry Garcia was dedicated, and these guys came up. They applied themselves.
Can I add a little thing? The very first episode I did, number 1 of 14, was Steve Miller Band's Fly Like an Eagle. And Steve Miller, who's from the Midwest, but then got his chops in Texas and Chicago, comes out to San Francisco in the middle of all of this. And it was like, most of these guys don't even know how to tune their guitars. We're going to dominate. And the Steve Miller Band did dominate. I mean, not to the extent of the Jefferson Airplane, but obviously. So again, it's exactly what Morty was saying. Like, all of these guys are like, I can plug in an electric guitar and kind of play while I'm high.
I think it's the same thing as comedy. I think at one point, if everybody looked around and was like, oh, everybody's doing, fuck it. I mean, if you don't do it, you're at least going to take a shot at it. You know what I mean? You're like, well, I mean, that's the bar back, the way, I'm in the car on the way to the gig. Fuck it. I'll do 5 minutes, and if I'm good, maybe it keeps going and maybe it doesn't. So with music, these people just started, plus they had training. If they grew up in homes, most people played a piano or they played a horn, a woodwind instrument. You hear that all the time where they're like, well, I was a clarinetist in high school.
Yeah.
And now I'm a featured guitar player.
I think even in this band, I think one of the guitar players had like one of those, what's the thing where the whammy bar on it? On his
guitar.
He
had a big speed pickup on his ST, John Cipollina.
Thank you.
And you guys will love this about John Cipollina also, which I'm sure Wayne already has, is he was 10 years older then, but another San Francisco band from the 70s, which also, because I'm an Elvis Costello fan, is a big fan. There was a band called Clover that ended up going to England, and they became the News, Huey Lewis and the News. Huey Lewis is in a band called Clover, played harmonica, and actually fell in with Thin Lizzy, with Phil Lynott, and plays on stuff with him. But they were in England. They're the band that backs up Elvis on My Aim Is True, on the first Elvis Costello record. But when they got back to San Francisco with Huey, his dad just kind of went, go try out, man. Go for it. Go to Europe and travel. the bass player in that band, Mario Cipollina, is John's little brother, is the bass player from Huey Lewis and the News that you see in all those videos. Dude kind of looks like Lurch.
Yeah.
Who looks like a Shana Na guy with the black sunglasses like this.
I know that I'd never heard.
Awesome. Yeah, he's John Cipollina. John Cipollina. So the guitar player in this band, he played an SG,
but
a modified SG with a Bigsby pickup. Sorry,
right.
With a Bigsby
so that's hard to stay in tune. That's hard to keep those guitars in tune. Is that correct?
And his rig. Here's what's amazing about this. Not to go into the instrumental weeds, but this is an integral part of what made them special. Yeah. Was that he had an SG. Now, if you know anything about a guitar, if you don't, those little casings that are near where the hand is playing on the strings are called pickups. Now, on certain guitars, you'll see like humbuckers, which will be these like, gold boxes. And then you'll see ones, and they're magnetic. They're copper wiring magnetic. It's how the sound is amplified. It's picking up the sound. It's the difference between an acoustic guitar and an electric guitar. You hit the string, it goes through the sound, the amplification, and it goes to where it's going. Now, he would have his SG, and he had two pickups. He had a bass and a treble. Now, what he did is he ran his bass pickup into its own separate amplifier, and he ran his treble into its own separate amplifier. I have a photo of it, and I'll send you to put up there. His rig was this monster amplifier. It was like 2-3 things, and then it had Leslie horns on top that were like literally look like harpo horns on top. It was like this huge box monster, and it gave him a very specific sound. But also because Bigsby pickups and SGs, because they were temperamental, it would whack him out of tune a lot. So he would compensate by, thing about singing, difference in a piano and singing is a piano, there's no waver in the tone. If you hit an A and you hit a G, they stay, unless the piano's out of tune, they essentially stay in tune. When you're singing, you self-correct. So if I'm singing a harmony and I hear you going slightly out, I compensate. And a drummer compensates for timing. But if you're playing guitar and you're good enough, you hear it start going out and you compensate by bending back or bending forward. So it gave him a unique sound to what he was doing. And once we said in improvisation, the other guys play off of your playing. So his part of Who Do You Love, because, they break it up.
Yep.
And Gary Duncan was no slouch, the other guitar player. He was still a great guitar player. But John Cipollina had a thing about his playing, and he's not brought up a lot by a lot of people. However, if you're in the scene, you guys know, and I do this, I ask Josh all the time, like, who's the comedian? Who's the unsung comedian of this? Who is the John Cipollina? The guy that you guys are saying is absolutely fucking indispensable. Because when you had Joe List on, and I went, I don't know as many people that know maybe Joe, but I know how respected he is in comedy. But maybe he's not big shtick wise that you immediately go, guy with the thing. He's just working man, great, balls out, fantastic comedian, no matter what he does. What he does is John Cipollina, even if he is huge, but he's not Dice.
I would say it's Dave Attell. It's Dave. I always feel like Dave
Attell. I tell that all the time.
But you'd be surprised. So many people just don't realize how respected and loved he is.
That's what I said to Jeff when they did Bumping Mics. I said, man, when that first special came out, and I saw him do it live when they were first starting. I said it to both of them. I said, this is as close as I've been to watching really like a Rat Pack workout. Like to watch guys spritz, to see like a Don Rickles with Buddy Hackett at the same time doing their best. I'm absolutely enamored by how fast they go. And Dave Attell to me has been the most, just from everything he's done, I just go, how the fuck? All the time when I see his stuff, I go, how the fuck is he so fertile? Like, how is he so fertile and in the moment and still act like, wow, but it's just an absolute fertile powerhouse of presence, in what he does to be able to pull it off in that way. So what you have is you have 4 guys in this band, and Dino, Valenti's sort of out.
Yeah.
And now you've got the 4 guys in this band. And what I was saying about,
by the way, named after the Greek gods, isn't that how it all came about?
Yeah, they got out of prison, came back, and sort of like Freiberg or something goes, oh, what do we call it? And like everyone else, you have a list of fucking 500 names. Like, how about Pussy Hounds? No, okay. How about? And then what he says is, he goes, well, 2 of the guys had the same birthday, and he goes, well, you guys are Virgos, so you're ruled by Mercury, and Mercury is Quicksilver. You know, is that's so they went
very San Francisco.
Mercury is the messenger. Mercury was the messenger god who brought Quicksilver Messenger, and we're service oriented. Quicksilver Messenger Service, and they went, yeah, it's fucking stupid, like every other band. And then they went, nothing else stuck.
Yeah,
and then that became the name of the band. And
I love it.
Yeah. And I will say, one of the things that I do love about this album is the cover art. I don't know who did it, but it
looks like an orange crate. Yeah, it reminds me of
isn't you said this was like a Roy Roger thing, right?
Yeah.
So I felt it's like it's the guy on the horse, right? And it's kicking up.
Isn't there a woman he's waving goodbye to or something?
Yeah, which is so weird because it really you want to start with the last song. Let's do this. Here's the last song.
Hold on, pause on the last song. Let me pee real quick, and then you pick it up right from that, Morty. Okay, pick it up from there. Don't you can around.
Okay. Well, I don't want to. By the way, and I meant everything. I am absolutely enamored with your ability to. I don't have the tenacity and the follow through. I can, if you catch me in a moment, I can spritz like this. But every time I say, except for writing songs and stuff like that, and really writing, once I dig in, I'm like 12 hours without stopping. But the fact that you wrote the book and that it's so encompassing and so. Like I said, like Andrew Hickey's podcast, I'm amazed with your writing just in general, but also your follow through of like, I'm going to archive this. I'm going to research this. I'm going to compile this. I'm going to pay attention to it because I know how much it means to you. That's why that kinship's there too. I mean, I didn't even talk about the stump, which is sort of how I ended up. There it is. Look how beautiful this is.
That's awesome.
Look how fucking gorgeous that is. So he's running.
We had Joe Bonamassa on. Talking about the end of the Les Pauls and the beginning of these,
SGs and the reasoning why to basically screw his wife out of money. I mean, that's really what the funny thing about it is. If you had something with Les Paul on it, his wife got money. So if you change the name of the guitar, no, it was I don't think it was Mary. I think it was before Mary, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe it was. I thought it was before her. That.
Oh, really?
I thought I could be wrong, but I thought the thing was the reason it went to SG.
Look, and what are those things on the side of this?
What do you mean on the top?
Yeah, those like little. Is that like the control knobs?
He would have different. Yeah, he had all kinds of things built in.
That's a Fender twin verb, right in the middle.
The top is a Fender head.
Yeah, but right below that, what are you?
I think I might be. It might be a Fender because I know what he did is he went to like a bass cab for the bass tone, the bass pickup, and he went to like a normal, like a twin amplifier for his guitar. So what it gave him is this, and then he has these Leslie horns on top and everything. But it was this fucking machine, like just a sonic explosion.
Yeah, if he could only keep his guitar in tune, it would have been really good.
But that was the thing, is just like Rickenbackers, because and you know this. Here's something else. Are we back on recording, Josh?
Yeah.
Here's something I want to say about.
Is this his rig?
What is it?
Yeah, that's his rig. Take a look.
That was his rig, and they had that at his memorial and stuff. Yeah, that's probably in a museum, but
it looks like what is it? Chunky from Pee-wee's Playhouse, like, or Conky?
Oh yeah, the little
the
robot or whatever.
Conky.
That was awesome. People. In fact, when you talk about Owsley, a lot of these people came up with amplification systems because if you were smart, you were smart.
Right. Again, this is the guy who figured out. This is the guy who figures out how to synthesize LSD, not in a lab, in his own home lab, and also was also a genius at sound systems, right?
Yeah, just put it, man. If you apply yourself, You know,
again,
if you
what
apply
a scene.
yourself,
What
you
a
can do a whole
wild
bunch.
scene. Can I, before we get to Happy
Look at
Chance,
Hedy Lamarr.
I will say that, you know, when George Harrison went to San Francisco in the Summer of Love, he was really disillusioned with the scene. Again, the Summer of Love is the one is 67. Obviously, it starts with Monterey and all of that, but that's the one where everyone thinks. But apparently, it was more in 65 and 66 was the real feeling of it, and by 67, it was just a bunch of runaways who were drug addicts.
Yeah,
and
It
was very scary. It was a very scary scene by that point.
Casualties, and that happens with every scene. It happened with the metal
yeah.
scene, happened
Yeah.
in the beats. You end up with the original people, and then you end up with the people that went there because they heard
Right.
And you know, remember nowadays it's like you hop on a plane because you heard about it. Then by the time it got to you, it might take you a year and a half to get it together and save up and hitchhike across. So, like we were saying, we were talking about Buffalo Springfield, and we were talking about this convergence of sound, what was happening in LA. Folk music happens, and then very much so with the Beatles, and you start hearing combos playing, and it bridges the gap between the early 60s of like garage bands, a Wurlitzer keyboard and Louie and da. And it starts becoming, and black music, which maybe was not as pervasive to a lot of these other people, starts coming in. I mean, you had folk people that were like Odetta and Leadbelly. They weren't going Little Richard, even though that turned them on. When folk music happened, it was a time, and we talked about this when you did In the Ghetto, which I was explaining to you, was to actually reflect on what was going on at the time and to take stock in that as a musician, especially as a young person, and comment on it. That wasn't immediate. That wasn't something that you would do all the time because you could get ire for doing that, for pointing that out as like, especially as like a young privileged Jewish white kid like Paul Simon, if he's singing about Look at the World, or, you know, Dylan coming from, you know, the Midwest, from Minnesota, and being a guy who just essentially wanted to be rambling Jack Elliott and Woody Guthrie, you know, to have this thing, but to start bringing that in, even you said Simon and Garfunkel, they sort of jumped on the folk thing. They weren't a folk band. They were like Everly Brothers, because it went rock and roll. Everly Brothers established that harmony, and that tight thing was awesome. Awesome. Then folk scene happens. People go, whoop. Dylan starts going this. Then they go, oh, Message. Oh, now this is important. Pop music is important. It actually changes things. This is not just about baby, baby, wake up little Susie. This is about the times they are changing. So now people start doing this. The Beatles come in and go, hey, now look at us. We're like a gang of people together, and we have a like-minded. We have one haircut. We have one suit. We all play these guitars. And bands that had come up kind of going, we could just, And then when Dylan's like, Not to Be Left Behind goes electric, and Johnson goes, hey, if I put a band behind like a Rolling Stone, and then he does the same thing with Sounds of Silence, if we put a beat group behind this, we make that palatable. Now you've got folk rock. And then San Francisco happens, and you start adding extra amplification of what Jimi Hendrix does. The noise and the drugs. And it just blossoms, and it's the summer of love, and it's color, and 65, 66. Acid, people
free
in
sex,
college.
free sex.
I mean, baby. The pill happens. Let's not forget the pill happens in what, like 60, 62? All of a sudden, the worst thing that could happen in fucking was that you got the clap. But you didn't knock the girl up. But you didn't knock the girl up. That was the thing. Was what was scary was not that you would get a venereal disease, was that you would get her pregnant. That was the end of your life.
And have to marry her.
Out and became you got with your job.
Yeah.
This became without consequence. This was literally sex and drugs with no consequence that you'd been told about that. You got the clap, you got a shot, it was gone. That was how fast it was. So now we end up in San Francisco, and all these bands that have
and also the weird kind of lighting, those light shows they would do behind the shows. That was part of the
experience stuff, right?
Yeah. It was an experience.
It was,
somebody was like,
it was.
And the post,
if I'm not mistaken, at the time, I think they used the word happenings. It was
happenings were
So wait, so if for someone like me who obviously was not alive during that, but it's like is there a video interpretation of that time that showcases all of that perfectly?
Well, the Monterey Festival is a great place to see previous record.
Yeah, and Quicksilver's at that festival, and
67.
Yes, and also what Morty was talking about, because there's an artist named Otis Redding who really ends up destroying at that. At that thing when everyone's like, oh, wait a minute, there's a guy who can sing like this. And if I'm not mistaken, I think the bass player of Quicksilver was like standing on stage in awe next to the amplifiers, watching that groundbreaking performance.
Yeah, Duck Dunn's.
Yes.
Playing, Duck. Which if you guys watch the Blues Brothers movie, besides everything about that movie being, it's so prescient because it essentially brought back a lot of black artists that hadn't been in the public eye in one shot. The second movie is horrible.
Mainly Cab Calloway.
But I'm saying is to have Cab Calloway in a movie that many years, and then James and Aretha, and by the way, John Lee Hooker is playing on the Ray Charles. Like these people, like it was like giving absolute a credence to these people that meant so much that had been marginalized at that point in the late 70s.
And they're doing a Sam and Dave act anyway, right?
And it's, really what they're, Double Dynamite. It's the 2-act. So the thing about Otis Redding is the band that's in the Blues Brothers is essentially Steve Cropper, who's the guitar player and was the SNL band leader for a while. With Duck Dunn. Duck Dunn and who was not the original bass player, but was in Booker T and the MGs, which are essentially the Funk Brothers were to Motown, and the way the Muscle Shoals had the Swampers, and how they were the
LA had the
Wrecking Crew.
The Wrecking Crew, right?
Yeah. So these guys were the Memphis. They were like the band that are on every one of those tracks that you would hear. Like, you'd have Isaac Hayes and Dave Porter writing a song, and then the band would play it, and Al Jackson Jr. be the drummer. And Otis Redding had a record. They did it. And then blah, blah, blah. So Duck Dunn was the bass player and Steve Cropper were the guitar player. And then they were with, but also were the touring band with Otis Redding.
Right.
And, the MGs and whatever else. And by the way, if you ever see Otis Redding, here's the most remarkable thing. Everything you've ever seen about Otis Redding, he died at 26.
I know.
You never saw him older than 26. Everything you saw,
he looked like he was
Otis
45.
Redding, looked like a linebacker.
No, it's
never
crazy.
Made it to 27.
I know. Trust me. You're talking.
Everything you see about him on stage, I got to. Like I
steal everything from him. I think the energy. Oh my God, his energy. One of my favorite records of all time is it's a 3-album set of he did 3 nights at the Whiskey, and it's just it's phenomenal. It's honest to God one of my favorite live records I've ever heard, because you can feel the energy.
Is that band is Cropper and Dunn playing on?
I think so. I never really researched who were the band members.
I think it's 66. I think, or maybe it's maybe a little later.
It's so good.
Anyways, so the band is this band. They come together. They rock out. They're in this scene. By the way, these guys are like roommates and housemates and boatmates with like David Crosby. And remember Marty Ballin, who was one of the singers in the Airplane. Grace Slick wasn't in the original incarnation of the Airplane. They had a different singer for the first album. She joined on the second, and she's on the second album. But Marty Ballin owned the Matrix, the club in San Francisco, where a lot of these people coalesced, rehearsed, played, and everything, showing you actually could kind of run a club and kind of do something. But there was hub of activity in a lot of these areas. And Sausalito, which obviously is where, was this live viewer comment shop? Sausalito was also, where they record Rumors, where there were other, studios later, another Bay Area scene. But that's where some of these other acts were from. Some were across the Bay, some were legitimately San Francisco. And then some would be like Marin and Sausalito, and like Oakland, areas surrounding, but they all got swamp, like stuck in to the San Francisco sound. We end up with this band. They play well together. They play off each other well. And they're in these scenes. And what I knew about them, and I don't know if you're the way I am, I became obsessive about all things, whatever that I'm into. And one of them was the visual accompaniment of the posters, the San Francisco rock posters, which I just absolutely, the family dog posters, like the Lenny Bruce one I have over there from the second to last show at the Fillmore with the mothers.
Yeah.
And
is that what like Kai does? Is that kind of what
Kai is absolutely, which is why I absolutely love Kai Arons, who is a friend also. He just one who did the Kamala poster that just came out with the Joy with her in the suit. And he's done a million other things. The first time I met him was the same thing. I just went, it's like Hirschfeld. I love visualization, or Mark Dancy, who did a lot of Detroit stuff. I love the visualization of rock and roll. I love the color of rock and roll. I love everything about it. And the same thing with comedy, with music. If you have a Hirschfeld, I want to find the Ninas, the Al Hirschfeld. I want to find, he does a drawing of like Lenny Bruce. I want to see what exaggerations he pulled from that. And so the San Francisco rock posters that came out at the time, you would know all the bands, and then you'd see Quicksilver Messenger Service.
Right. You'd always see
invariably they'd be on everything, but I didn't really know them. I would go, oh, they're playing with Big Brother and the Holding Company. They're playing with the Doors. They're playing with the Turtles. They're playing with the Mothers. They're playing with the Airplane. They're playing with, but Quicksilver Messenger Service escaped me, and Moby Grape, and they sort of escaped me. And in
because
this
they
record,
didn't play they'd never played Woodstock.
Right. There were some bands that just didn't. If the Grateful Dead sounded like Quicksilver Messenger Service, I'd be a bigger fan, because I love everything about the Dead, some songs, but I love everything about them. I love that they have a brand, that they have, that they were of the people, I just didn't love the
Look, this is a great story of, again, commercial success in an artistic form. How does it happen? Is there branding? Obviously, there's luck involved. Obviously, there's, usually there's one hit single involved with these things. And so I'm looking at you, Money, with Pink Floyd. Like, there's usually one thing that, like, okay, this. And I don't think that ever happened with Quicksilver. I mean, as much as I like this album, and it didn't. And I think one of the reasons,
this album especially,
yes, and one of the reasons this album's on this list was the capturing of that scene, is my opinion, of like, oh, wow, this is a for real thing. And two, that Rolling Stone magazine is from San Francisco. And I think they really are elevating that era of rock music. That's just my take on it, but I might be wrong.
Oh, no, it's a big, but side one, like we said, well, can we just do, we have to do Happy Trails.
Of course, but I want to just give this I guess we could do it. I'll just do it now because I'm already talking about it.
Yeah.
So this is not Rolling Stone, 189. It's not on the new list. It was on all the, it's not on the new list, but it was ranked number 44 when Rolling Stone did 50 coolest records of all time, which is just, they're just looking for anything. And then Mona, which is the start of side 2, was ranked number 88 on 100 greatest guitar songs of all time. And I just looked, because you guys were talking, I was like kind of looking through the band. Is it David, or was it fuck, let me just make sure I got this right. One of them is been ranked, was ranked. Oh no, the guy that died,
John Cipollina.
Yeah, he was ranked as they had him ranked as the 32nd of the 100 greatest guitarists of all time.
Mainly for setting up that rig. Mainly for
that was it. Really schlepping it. Really. He was the only guy that had the van. He was just sort of like, I'm going to build it till I can't drive there.
He's just for schlepping.
That was it.
John, come on. I got 5 more trips.
That was all it was.
Yeah. I love it.
But isn't this wasn't there a commercial, where they played this song? Who do you love?
Well, who do you love is a classic.
I know it's a Diddley song, but I feel like I heard this version of it on like a commercial.
Think you would have, because even the vocal on it sort of comes in so soft. Like it's recorded, but even when he started singing, it was like, I walk 45 miles above. Like it's not a present, even though it's recorded live and sweetened, it's not a present recording. The song really is not about the song. It was just a vehicle to get them in to this thing. And what we end up with,
improvisational musicianship.
Time out. And we got to go to it. John Cipollina's his amplifier. It's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Oh, the stack is in the rock. It was inducted in 90, not the band. The amp was inducted in 95.
What other
Freiberg was Freiberg has his own closet at Folsom where he's got his trophies.
Yeah, I assume also in the instruments would be Dylan's harmonica holder was also inducted. What else? What other iconic?
The Linda Lovelace's Glory Hole. I believe that was
talking about rock and roll.
Plaster caster.
Okay, Jonathan Davis from Korn's mic stand, which is like that fucking H.R. Geiger,
which my friend helped. My friend helped him get that wheel set up.
I think some of the scarves from the Aerosmith.
I was going to say that. I was going to say that.
What other iconic like things? Oh, maybe the gong. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe Willie Dixon's prosthetic legs. Yeah, there was he was diabetic and he had his legs cut. But
where were we?
I was saying
we're at Happy Trails. We're at Happy Trails.
Well, the one thing I want to do is let's talk about the Bo Diddley song. 2 Bo Diddley songs on this record,
right?
And the crazy thing about it is,
I think there's only 5 songs on the record, right?
Well, there's 5. There's 6 suites. Who do you love?
Suites. It's just what they call the solo.
That's one song. That's one song.
Then
there's another Bo Diddley song on the other side.
Mona,
2 originals, and then a Dale Evans
instrumentals.
Song, right?
Yeah, which is crazy because
why?
So with the Bo Diddley thing, which is wild about this, is so we have the Bo Diddley song. So for those of you who don't know, it's Ellis McDaniel is Bo Diddley's real name. So when you see that, you're not like, he didn't write that. What we talked about before, which is, I love these full circles, is that very original kind of which you hear on
I guess it would be nice
1969, which you hear Faith, George Michael Faith, which you hear on don't Not Fade Away. Mona is the inspiration for Not Fade Away by Buddy Holly. That rhythm, that kink, 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 which we know the Dead had a big cover with, as well as a million other bands. But it was written about a stripper. Ellis wrote it about an exotic dancer, that he worked with in Detroit, So both songs sort of have that, which is great for a drummer because it's also a very establishable beat. A 4/4 or like a bat, boom, boom, bat, bat, boom, bat, boom, boom, bat, bat, sort of doesn't have as much air for a band to get sort of sinewy with, but like a go, 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 go. There's a lot of space. And especially when you can sort of go, you can fill in places there. And there's a lot of room for improvisation. And although they got a keyboard player later, at one point, Nicky Hopkins, which is absolutely mind-blowing, because you have the guy that played piano with fucking the Stones and everybody, who then joins a bunch of Americans, like in this band. But for this record, there's this, quality that they go through. And even though it's written by Ellis, they figure out a way to break off every guy in the band by giving him a writing credit for his part of that first song. And what's so amazing about the Who Do You Love suite is that it's such a shticky thing, even though I love it, that it starts with Who Do You Love? And then Gary's guitar part is When You Love. And then the drummer's part is Where You Love. And then Cipollina's part's How You Love. And then Freiberg's is Which Do You Love? And then they go, all right, now we're back to Who Do You Love? At the end, it's just hysterical that they did it you can see them kind of going, I got it. We have Who. I mean, it's amazing. And that it's even the audience is given credit. During Greg Elmore's part, during the drum part, when he does the back and forth, and the audience is like, yeah, they're listed in the credits as having like a contribution to the record of like them in the, it's like giving a heckler fucking, all right, you get 8% because you gave me great crowd work.
Right.
You know, it's like amazing that they did that. But San Francisco and that scene at the time, man, like I said, if you dance and you go dancing, you don't want it to end. If you have a teeny bopper shaking, you got a chick dancing, man, you don't stop.
Especially with that acid dance the girls would
always
do.
And she's post twist and she's shimmying and you're in the front row. Freiberg said that. Freiberg was like, I saw how long it took John to tune. And I realized while we're on stage, while he's tuning, they're still in the audience vibing off what we're doing. Holy shit. This is part of the show.
This is part of the tuning was part of and I assume this is, if not this band in particular, this is what Steve Miller saw when he landed in San Francisco. Was like,
yeah, it said I could kick these guys' ass. Like I was taught by actual blues guys.
Howlin' Wolf. Yeah.
He came to my house, showed me how to play. These dudes are doing third place rejects of Bo Diddley. Howlin' sat in my kitchen. I made him rice and coffee, and he showed me how to bar the chord.
Crazy.
And now I'm here. And by the way, Bob Skaggs in that band also.
Yes. That's
and
true.
Steve Miller. And
still one of the best, one of the most kick in the dicks, not realizing how dope Boz was, because I always thought he was a joke. Because I remember Mr. Show doing a joke about him doing an impromptu Office concert for this one. It's in a sketch, and then you listen to "Loan Me a Dime." That the fucking was it great?
Who's Kevin Nealon, right?
But who's the Allman Brother that died? The guitarist,
Dwayne Allman.
Dwayne Allman does that like 9-minute guitar solo in it that is just phenomenal. So.
Yeah, there's another one of those songs, which we'll get to. Well, we did Allman Brothers, but which we'll get to in that too, and his connection to all the country and the soul and the Muscle Shoals and the Aretha and the and all of that interpolation. But for this, you had bands like this that were essentially dance bands for happenings, for kind of druggy in the park. We're not going to stop, because if we stop, the chicks stop. So we keep going, and even if the guy's tuning, some guy could be like until he's back up again. We have another guitar player and we get through it. So this first suite is really, as a band, and this isn't even just a jam thing, they really go on an adventure. If you listen to what they're doing, that weird all that stuff, that's not jam band stuff. And what the bass player, when Freiberg changes what they're doing and the 4/4 on the drums, and then when they go to these things, that's not your standard jam band wheedly. That's like,
no, I know it's
real
sort of the
jazzy improvisation.
And again, the birth of what I'd like to call acid rock, which was like super electrified experimental music in the rock oeuvre, right?
And what I love about when you look at the YouTube stuff, you can find some great footage of these guys. Everybody, the comments are like, I'm 73 now. And all I'm thinking is like, these guys are experimenting with boofing acid through colostomy bags now, because, they're just like, how do I get this into me and still because they're saying it like, I was lit when I heard it for the first time, and I was lit this morning.
And there was also there was this great rumor about their records that they were sent over to Vietnam for the troops over there with acid in the sleeves.
I believe it.
Yeah.
I believe that.
That was part of the aesthetic of the time. It was like, this is your time to turn on and tune in.
And drop the fuck out and try to stay out of the war, man.
Yeah, and try not to get killed by a VC.
Yeah. Right. So this record, the fact that the two main covers are Bo Diddley songs, shows the ode to black music and shows the ode to this, to what they hung this on. Because the other instrumentals are good, but
the two songs they wrote.
They're instrumentals. I mean, it's hard for us, and I've talked to Josh before when it was like, we have a record coming up, and I look at it and I go, we're doing a Miles Davis record. We can't talk about lyrical content. What are we going to talk about? The title? You know, I was like, what are we going to say? Like, you know,
Well,
7? Like what? Like we can't.
I guess, but there's certain things that I think when it was fun about the podcast is like, you know, there's always something to talk about. There's always like a history behind it.
Course,
I think we always find that the groove. There's like or the cream cheese, as I call it, the spread. You know,
well,
what I mean?
We find I love that they end the album with Happy Trails. Which, by the way, when I saw Van Halen in 77 or 78, yeah, they were ending their shows by doing an a cappella version of that.
Yeah, with Dave go, ba doo doo ba
yeah.
And that schmaltz, I've talked about that when we had Patrick Wilson on from Weezer. I talk about how David Lee Roth was the absolute bridge between the Borscht Belt vaudeville performers, because his uncle also owned Cafe Wah, were the Borscht Belt bridge from rock and roll over. Yes, it took it, you know, it did a Black
and
Oak
I think
Arkansas.
A little Las Vegas lounge, a little.
But that isn't. Remember when we talk about Elvis, Las Vegas schmaltz wasn't Las Vegas schmaltz.
I know
until it became, because we were talking about we just did Elvis 60, you know, and he does the Ken Kerkorian international gig.
Yeah.
But it wasn't Elvis and the thing and Goofy and a jumpsuit, and it was. Oh my God, entertainment. This is the entertainment capital of the world. People come to us, and now we can do shows, and now we can do that whole sort of like, is this thing on? You know, that archetypal Borscht Belt where Mel Brooks and, you know, Sid Caesar and, you know, the Catskills, the Grossingers, those places. If you watch Dirty Dancing, it's supposed to be like the place they're at, with the watermelons and the abortion and the dancing, were places Jewish people went for the summer.
But this is true. I know you're saying it in comedy, but this is true also in music. I mean, no better example than what happened to those hair metal bands when Nirvana hit the scene.
Yeah, they just found themselves.
What happened to Poison?
Obsolete.
You were there, Morty. I'm not to be like you were there, like, but weren't you there? Like,
I was. The reason the Kibit started, honestly, was I was in a band called The Imposters. The Wallflowers had just become the Wallflowers, and there's a band called the Freewheelers and a few other bands, and we felt incredibly disenfranchised in our own town because the Sunset Strip, which had been pay to play, had been taken over with these, you know, guys from out of town in fucking obscenely skinny pants, and we loved Elvis Costello and the Clash and the band and, you know, all these other musical interplay things. And these people seemed only cosmetic. It seemed to be that was more important than what the music was that. And so we found a place that was our little local deli. And Rami went to Fairfax. Rami's now in the Foo Fighters. Rami went to Fairfax, and we all were at this one place at one time after gigs. And we were like, hey, you got a piano here. Can we just come in on like a Tuesday and sit around the piano and play? And then the next week was this. And 33 years ago, everything happened on a Tuesday. Christmas Eve was a Tuesday. Most of us were Jewish, so we didn't care. And then New Year's was on a Tuesday, and it exploded. And then January, it was off to the races. Freewheelers were on tour with Black Crowes. He brought Luther, brought some of them in. And then David Wild wrote about it for Rolling Stone, who was another guest on the show, and with the Nana Cherry on the cover issue. And then it exploded. That's the thing you see in front of Canners that has the written up, the blurb. And then it was like an explosion for years. And then I did a DJ thing there, and then I came. And that's around the Stump time. When you guys, when the sort of Stump was around, which is how I know Wayne, which is Jay Kogan's, I don't even know how to describe it, but it was like early version of like having a text thread of just the most funny people you've ever heard. And Dan Pasternak and I went to Hebrew school together, and I'm like, Dan Pasternak, and then Dave Pressman brought me in, who I saw last night. And then it was like everybody from The Simpsons and everybody and I didn't even know I saw Wayne's name before I met Wayne. I would see his name in this thread, and it was just like, who's Wayne Federman?
Just so you know, it was an invite only.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway.
I was the only non-comedian you know, amongst a lot of these people, I was one of the only people that wasn't a comedian, but I
Or a
grew up with like
writer on a or a
Buddy
comedy.
Mora, and I grew up with like, you know, I grew up around comedians and stuff, but I was in this world, and 9/11 happened a month after I joined. And God bless Eric Gilliland, who was, you know, chiefly there in New York at the time, who was an incredible writer who just recently passed away. I saw these people and we immediately gelled around this traumatic incident. And then these people became like, now there's still kind of a perfunctory version of the stump on Facebook. But even to this day, I am still friends with people through that and still connected to people too. I'll never forget. Because when I think about 9/11, I think about sitting on the floor with my first computer and writing to people in New York who didn't know what was going on and telling them what it looked like in Los Angeles from the news, from the feeds, because they were blacked out because they couldn't get it.
Yeah.
So that's how I met Wayne. And so I was just talking about, you know, the comedy world, whatever. I forgot how we exactly got on this, but it was a kibitz. That was what it was a scene. Hair metal was happening. We didn't feel like we were a part of it, and we didn't want to pay to play anymore. So the coffee house scene blew up, which I'm sure comedy,
it's like
probably
what,
like Highland
Pipe
Grounds,
and yeah.
Well, like Verve Piper in Michigan, but like remember when Highland Grounds and Pick Me Up, and all of a sudden people were getting sober, and people were looking for a place that wasn't pay to play, and they were looking to break out of the established. You have to pay this much to do a gig, or you have to sell tickets, or you have to, or there isn't an. And we ended up where we did what a lot of, I guess, comedians did, like when Ahmed and Jay started Dublin's, where they did, which is where I met in Chris Magaha before I was newer on the stump. I emceed that show, the early show there, just because they were like, "Hey, you're funny. You want to just go up and invite people up?" And I went, "Great." And I knew Ahmed, and I knew Jay Davis as being the bar back at the Roxbury when our band played downstairs. So it was the same thing. It was taking over a small room, making it your own, controlling the environment, and not being a part of an established scene. And I think that was another big thing about San Francisco was, even though Bill Graham was the keeper of the castle, there seemed like you could just throw down a thing in the park and you're fucking, there you are. You're in a band. There you are. You're a comedian. You're doing it. Same advice I give to my kid. Doesn't matter what you do. I don't care if you make money off it. Do it to the best of your ability. When your head hits the pillow at night, you did the best job you could do. Be the best, whatever that is, that you can do. I don't care about the success of it. And neither does the world. And it probably won't happen. But that's not why you do it. That's not why you do it. You do it if you're compelled to do it. And when you're not compelled, if Eddie Murphy doesn't want to do stand-up anymore, even though it blows my mind that one day he could just say no to something like that, because I see how ingrained in you guys it is and what that electricity is. But if he decided not to, because that wasn't substantial, I go, okay. I'm constantly blown away by that.
We should call this episode the brain tangents of Morty Coyle.
But I follow, I weave.
Oh,
that's the operative.
Am I wrong about that? Like, what?
Well, the one thing I want to say is, in a world
the one thing.
Hey, this is Josh's. This is what happens to Josh when he goes, just tell me one thing about a band. And then 2.5 hours, he's like,
oh God.
So 2 minutes ago. All I'm saying is, to have a woman, Roy Rogers' wife, Dale Evans, she wrote Happy Trails, which I think is like a lot of people, if you came up in an era and you listen to the radio, Happy Trails was the tune for the Roy Rogers show. And you guys can't imagine how popular cowboy everything was.
Cowboy culture. Again, don't forget the cover of this album is a cowboy. Yeah. And don't forget the Eagles also were like desperados. It was a big theme in music at that time to sort of,
and not even country.
Yeah, right.
It was just everything. You know, it became gangsters. It became,
yeah. It's not country. Yeah. It's country and Western. This was the Western part of that music.
Yeah,
these
and you're talking about Chuck Band, Grateful Dead.
Yeah.
It was
with these country Western singers. Obviously, in Bakersfield there was a crazy scene of these guys.
Oh God, yes, the Buck Owens scene of that era. You know, and that
and there were swing bands, but
And by the way, Roy Rogers' band, Riders of the Purple Sage, and what we know about the Dead is one of their offshoot bands was the New Riders of the Purple Sage. To give you an idea of how connected they were to that scene.
But I actually, it might be my favorite track on the album.
Happy Trails.
Happy Trail.
I mean, I know it's the name of the album, right?
So you remember, do you remember at the beginning of the episode, you were like, let's talk about the last album. Well, we're an hour 44 and we finally got to talk about it.
I'm ready to wrap.
Let's do it. What? No.
Sorry, I'm exhausted. This is why I don't stay married.
This is my, So anyway,
that's a lot of fun for a little while.
That's it. I mean, one, it's a song. Two, it's wistful. Three, it's, you can hear the audience in it responding to what they're doing. The live version of it is just great. And the fact that Van Halen stole it for their,
I always wonder, I wonder if they actually, because it wouldn't surprise me. I mean, Van Halen really starts in the early 70s. So it wouldn't surprise me that, I mean, that's when you start getting anything where you're like, it's only 6 years later, or whatever. Like, this is a record you'd have, on your shelf of records that you were just listening to when you were like 13 and now you're like 19. It's not unheard of that you would have this record on there in your, I love, the things that never filtered to us, like way you might be into like Sponge. And then a kid today is like, I've never heard of Sponge. But they absolutely, or Lit, but they absolutely know Stone Temple Pilots, or they absolutely know Creed, or but those are the bands that were big, but just haven't carried on.
So to put a period on this, like so to come to the conclusion of why this record is on the 500 greatest albums list is because this encapsulates that scene.
Along with other bands. But yes, it is one of the bands, and in it, yes. Yeah, of course.
So I
can't imagine why else it would be on there.
Well, obviously, I mean, they're saying like the guitar playing and the rig and the
of course, all of that.
And Roy Rogers started a fast food chain because of this. His popularity came back, and he was like, you know what? Let's fried chicken.
No Roy Rogers, no Kenny Rogers roasters.
Did you ever eat at Roy Rogers? My dad used to go there all the time. That was like,
was that an East Coast thing?
It was definitely an East Coast. What are those? The rest stop food. You know what I mean? Okay. Like when you're driving up 95.
Like,
no.
Like a Dairy Queen.
You don't have that they don't have them in the West Coast, but but Wayne, because you're from Florida and you've lived in Maryland, when you drive up 95, Morty, because there's so many big cities in between, there's literally an hour between
the Eastern Seaboard, the whole fucking
so now it's like, but it used to just be like Sbarro's, it used to be Roy Rogers,
mall food kind of things.
But Roy had a fucking Gold Rush chicken sandwich that would kick you in the D.
So it was like a big deal even when you were a kid.
Well, my family used to go there, man, and my dad was he'd get his chicken breast and he'd put some honey on it, and
we had Kentucky Fried Chicken and Pioneer.
Well, so did we. But Roy Rogers.
Was Pioneer an East Coast thing?
I didn't have Pioneer back either.
Oh, you did Pioneer. I mean, even Warren Zevon talks about it on Carmelita.
Pioneer chicken.
Stand, because that was when you grew up in LA, you had Kentucky Fried Chicken or Pioneer, and Pioneer had a different breading, and then and a lot of people swore by that. In fact, I think there might be only one or two left. But the reason I think this record's on here is the interplay on this first song. Really, what I think this entire record comes down to is that you have a very well documented version of a San Francisco experience, whereas the Dead never really accomplished capturing the live thing that they did at their shows that brought them so much attention on record. Taping wise, they did, and the experience of the live show they did, and they had good songs here and there, but they would do a record and they'd be like, but you had to, but it still doesn't. This really does give you the San Francisco experience of a 27-minute song, but it doesn't meander so much that you can't hear it and follow along musically, which I think, people hear jazz and they just get kind of flummoxed that I don't understand it, or it's too much for me. With this, you never lose sight. Even when the audience is into it, you're like, wow. And even on like a Peter Frampton song, if he does like a 2-minute excursion, do you feel? This is really interesting, is that it also feels a bit intimate, and it's you're at these two Fillmores, like you're talking about, if you're going to grab the San Francisco experience, I don't think you can really find a record that gives you maybe what it was like to really be there and not just be deluged in the kitsch and the schmaltz. Yeah, man, hippie culture, man. It's not Abby Hoffman yelling over it. It's not Brown Acid. It's not kick out the jams, motherfuckers, where that's it. It's actually musician-wise and musicianship-wise pretty interesting, and I'm glad that we got to hear it, because now now I can say, wow, you know what? I know something about these guys. And by the way, Freiberg went on to be in Jefferson Starship. He co-wrote Jane, which is like a huge hit for them. And he left the band for the best reason ever. He didn't like them doing We Built This City. He was like, don't do this piece of shit demo song. And he went, I'm out. And he left the band.
Freiberg looks like the bad guy in the Warriors. Warriors come out and play. He looks like him. He really does. They all look like guys that look.
I don't know that he's Jewish. He should be, but his hair is.
He's Jewish. Freiberg, good God. Give it up for.
Can you think of a better Jewish acid casualty than Freiberg?
Yeah,
I mean, that's almost like a
literally fried. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway,
I mean, they're still touring. It says in 2000. Now it's David Freiberg's There's a version, yes. It's David's Quicksilver Messenger Service.
I thought Freiberg died. Cipollina died. I know Valenti died.
Freiberg's still alive. He's 80.
Is he still alive? Okay.
86. Good God.
Oh no, dude. he's like the only. I think he's the only.
I believe he is. Yeah.
Of the band, right? And he was doing, and
he's the only one still delivering the message.
Yeah, still there, and he still looks around on stage. Where'd they go? They were just here. I'm gonna go touch that amplifier.
The other guy's still loading in his equipment, and
right. And what I'd like to say is this was a very idealized era in rock music. And again, when I heard George Harrison talk about that it was like the Bowery and it was scary and in 67, and then I feel like this scene sort of ends. There isn't a direct end to it, but maybe with that Altamont concert in 69, which was in San Francisco. And then of course there was that Golden Gate Killer with the Zodiac, that guy was
murder.
So it was like a lot of, but that was more LA. And then and it just had like this weird, very dark ending to this beautiful life affirming, drug free love thing, and then how the excess of that can fold in on itself. And cut to Jerry Garcia driving around in a Mercedes.
And let's not discount Nixon was the president.
And Nixon gets elected, but not during
second
the
term.
Yeah,
second term. Yeah, 68.
No.
I'm saying he has his first one, but it's so. That's how far pushed the disillusionment went.
Nixon gets elected. And also, I hate to say
during Vietnam,
the undercurrent of the Vietnam War, which is like darkened everything at that time. A little bit of like, oh, my buddy who couldn't get into college is not coming back or coming back paralyzed. It was really dark. There was a draft.
We will never know. I mean, you're a little older than I am, but Josh, you'll never know a world where the Vietnam War is not. I mean, I remember coming to school and having the teacher write Vietnam on a piece of paper in 75 and say, this ended. Because it's just omnipresent. I mean, Watergate, whatever. I was born in 68, right in this. Like she wrote Vietnam, and it was just everywhere. Nixon with the fingers up. It was just everywhere. And when it ended, it was like, wow. And we saw everything after. I mean, we saw firsthand everybody coming home, and then just every bit of cinema, every bit of Coming Home and Deer Hunter, and to the point where Platoon, Born on the 4th of July, like we're still in the wave of it. And now it's been so long.
The wake of it.
Yeah, the wake of it, that we don't even have like you guys don't even really have that now. Like, what's a comparison? Like Gulf War?
I know, maybe 9/11. 9/11.
Yeah, 9/11 of a moment where you go, oh my God. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God, everything. There was this, and then there was this.
Right.
And it lasted forever. But anyway, so that's Josh. What you have. Yeah.
Yeah. That's my I think you
no, you're not recording. I'm kidding.
Do you guys want to do, you want to do favorite songs?
Yeah, you do it.
Let's do it. What's our favorite song? Which level of the first of Who Do You Love? Which couplet?
It's not for me. I'm like a Happy Trails.
You love Happy Trails.
You're Happy Trails.
I love the title track. I love the title track.
Yeah. I mean, really I'm impressed that after all of that meandering, they end a record with that. But I would say Cipollina's stuff, and even Gary's stuff, and even the bass solo stuff on Who Do You Love. I'm really impressed.
You like the whole suite.
I did.
I
listened to it a few times, and I didn't think I would. I thought I'd go, oh. And then I listened to it and I went, I get it.
I love this record. I really did like this record. All right. Was there anything that you skip over? Wayne, do you skip over the whole first side?
No. I like the first. I actually like the suite more than their 2 instrumentals on side B. For me. I don't know how you feel about that. But I mean, no, I listen to the suite, but again, I'm very middle class when it comes to my music. Like, I like songs with the beginning, middle, and end.
You're a pop guy.
Yeah, you do. Yeah,
I'm a pop guy. I'm a pop guy.
Yeah, we talk about that all the time with Josh. Where I'm like, nah, give me 3 minutes, and if there's anything more than that,
right? Again, this is an FM radio.
Yeah,
that's crazy that you keep saying that, because I only know FM as being the good radio station and AM being the butt cheeks.
AM didn't exist when you were a kid. For that, it was news radio when you were
a kid. FM. FM.
It was pop. AM was pop radio.
99.1 FM.
Old people. Yeah, FM was old people. AM was the hits, the clicks, Murray the K.
Yeah,
that
all
was
of those
AM radio.
Yeah.
Wolfman Jack and Paraquat Kelly and all the great,
Can you fuck to this
Howling
record?
Hank
and DJ Howlin' Hank? Me. Can you fuck to this record? I think you can. I think people did.
I don't know about side one.
At the Fillmore.
Oh yeah, maybe I'm going to pass on that.
It's only 49 minutes.
Hey, listen, Mona alone, I could appreciate the sensibility.
Yeah, maybe Mona. Yeah, and it has the word moan in it. Has the word moan.
And the first song sounds like you'd get a sore jaw trying to keep up with it. And then Happy Trails. Who doesn't like a happy trail?
Yeah, dude. I think this is out there, but you can do it. And what would be your elevator pitches to get someone to listen to this record? Morty, go first.
It's just if you're going to have a record that brings the spirit of the 60s San Francisco scene that isn't just drenched in artifice and the shtick of the time, this is the side one. Really captures all of it. It's an ode to black music by white musicians who have interplay, who are not just relying on soundscapes. They're actually playing together, and it comes across.
Wayne, what do you got, bud?
Same thing. I think is a great example of the San Francisco sound of the time, and a convergence of not only emerging technologies in guitar amplification, and also the drug culture. I feel like the drug culture is a big part of this album.
Yeah, dude. I I'm so glad I had the two of you guys on. I want to do this more often when we have a record like this.
We can't get what else to do. We'll get these
we can't get anybody. We can't get anybody. I love you guys. Promote away, Wayne. Tell us about the Mel Brooks documentary. I know it's coming out.
Tell me about it. I didn't know.
Well, yeah, we're producing. The same crew is back. The band is back that did Shanley and Carlin. We're doing Mel Brooks. We are now doing Mel Brooks. But here's the other news. I'm also working on another documentary with Judd. This is maybe the first time. I don't even know if I'm allowed to announce this. I'm going to wait till next time. But it's about a comedian who died a year ago. Who died a year ago of cancer. And I'll leave it at that. And
you said a comedian?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
leave it. I'm gonna try to just
and that's all. And then you can also get the book that Morty loves so much.
No, honestly, guys,
the history of stand-up from Mark Twain to Dave Chappelle. Yeah,
I mean,
I love it.
The fact that, like I said, the fact that obviously I talk too much, but the fact that you love what you do the way I do. One other thing that I have to bring up about Wayne, which is you're an ukulele player. And I didn't realize that you actually play like ukulele and electric. My mom's in like a senior band called CC Strummers, and I'm friends with the Ukes at Hazard. But I didn't really know that you played, that you brought, like Saget used to have the guitar thing. You used to sort of bring in electric ukulele and play like classic rock.
Yeah.
Please,
to the point
at some point, play with us. Play at the jam. Play at the.
You should. He's done the jam. He did the jam recently. That was actually no. You didn't play ukulele.
I have a Les Paul guitar. Like I play guitar as well. Yeah.
No, I know, but you and Marin and all them. But I want to see the ukulele thing because of the restraints of 4 strings. That was such an incredible thing.
One of the
when I started watching it.
Yeah, one of the highlights of my life was being invited to the Ukulele Festival of Great Britain and performing over there. I mean, the main headliners were so much better than me, but it was just that my little contribution to the evolution of the uke was recognized. Was like, okay, this is awesome.
Yeah, and that's not. I mean, George Fromby, and I mean that they have a George Harrison. That's a rich history of an instrument connected to a very like the accordion, very much connected to that vaudeville. English
music
theater,
hall.
Music hall thing is like, hey, it's little. You can bring it with you on the train. It's not gonna, it's not a big thing, and you can play it, and you can get by with very minimal fingering and learn how to do it. And speaking of very minimal fingering, Josh,
yeah, buddy.
So you want to take it? Oh, that's right. So Wayne, buy his book, please. Buy his book. It's fantastic.
It's great, dude.
It's the history of. I mean, come on, him and Cliff Nesterhouse. I mean, Nesterov are like the two people that I look at and I go, I'm just so glad you guys exist for doing it, because I worry that it'll be left to like the Biography Channel or something, and then it'll just be whoever's out at the time will be like, not to shit on Ali Wong, but it'll be like an hour on Ali Wong and 10 minutes on Buddy Hackett. Right. You know what I mean? Just because they have to.
Yeah.
And that's a thing too, That man, amazing. If you're in LA on a Tuesday night, go to the Kibitz Room.
Yeah.
If you've never seen the Kibitz Room, go. Morty leads
just make it free.
It's free.
Yeah,
it's absolutely
free. And arugula. Go get some soup and sit there and eat. And then find me on Twitter. I mean, whatever it's called now, DJ Morty Coyle on that stuff. And then, B and Daddy Cartoons is still up. If you guys want to watch me and my kid when she was little singing songs, that the kind of thing that you'd imagine I would turn my child onto, God help her, then it would be stuff like that. But more than anything, buy Wayne's book and the Mel Brooks documentary. I am salivating.
It's gonna roll.
I literally had no idea when I wore this.
When it came on.
I am absolutely. I cannot wait. If it's half as good as the Carlin and the Gary Shandling diary,
it's not going to be. They already said it's the worst. They already said it's the worst thing. They don't even know why they're doing it.
Mel was like, I got to live long enough that I can do a second one.
Oh, God bless him, man. That's the one I did get to say hi to him. I did get to say hi to him, and he was like being ushered. He did a screening of Blazing Saddles at the Nokia, and he was in the hallway, and I go, Mel, and he's like, hi, good. And I was like, I wanted to touch his hand.
My daughter is doing the play tomorrow.
Isn't that crazy? Like they're doing Young Frankenstein out of all the plays.
They're doing the play for her first school play.
I love that.
Musical.
I love that,
so,
guys.
Yeah, I am huge.
And I love the two of you. You know how much I love both of you guys. Thank you
All
guys
Day
so much.
Sucker.net. Sorry, I'd kill myself if I didn't put the band out there. All Day Sucker.
Check it out.
We're on everything. Find us.
Support them, guys. Thank you. As usual.
Thank you.
All right, this is done. This comes out a week from tomorrow.